ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Country Music Armadillo Show. Once again, we're teaming up with the lovely Miss Mary Spar and Young Mary's Records. She's helping us out with this one. Our guest on this edition, man on the tip of the tongue of a lot of people around music right now, Mr. David Vaughn Lindsey. David, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that so much.
So let's go ahead and talk about a young Dave. How did you kind of get interested in music, and who were like your main influences?
Actually, my mother is a piano player and a singer herself. My grandfather, he's like 83 years old. He just retired from being a pastor. He was a pastor for over 60 years. So when my mother was born and got old enough, Grandpa informed her that she was going to play for the Lord, and she started playing piano and singing. And so I remember, growing up Southern Baptist, my dad was an interim pastor for a lot of places. So when a preacher was sick, Dad would fill in for him. Of course, Grandpa was preaching, so a lot of times I would go with Mom, and she'd play the piano, and I'd sing with her, and just being in the church and singing in the choir and things like that. That's what really started, I guess, all my music influences. I was doing talent shows and stuff in junior high, always being around people that I thought were good musicians and people that I enjoyed their music. When I was a kid, I used to listen to a lot of James Brown, Hank Williams Sr., Bob Seger, Boys to Men, a lot of Waylon and stuff like that. I kind of got in. I listened to it, but I didn't really dig into a lot of that stuff until I got a little older. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but when I started making like my own music, it was around, I guess, 2000. And a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, Josh English, we grew up together. There was a hip hop group in Bowling Green that had just kind of broke out called Nappy Roots, and we met up with those guys. And Josh English and a gentleman that was in Nappy Roots at the time by the name of Cortez Murray asked me if I wanted to rap, and they had all the stuff, all the equipment, and basically brought me in, and I started making hip hop music. Was the first music that I actually made of my own. And we were in a group called the Good Old Boys, G.O.B., kind of taking off that Dukes of Hazzard theme a little bit.
Awesome. I did not. So you talked about growing up with family members in the church. Was there ever any time that you had contemplated going into preaching, maybe?
Actually, I went to a youth camp one year. I had a real good youth pastor, and he's a pastor now. He's kind of like a spiritual advisor for me by the name of Tim Clovis. And I actually used to preach sermons as when I was like 16, 17 years old. I was preaching in these little country churches. Yeah. I guess I figured that I didn't feel like that was the right path for me. I didn't feel like that's where the Lord wanted me. I felt like I was almost a soldier instead, in the trenches fighting for him instead of. And plus, I can't live that life, man. That's a that's a hard life to live for me, man. I didn't want to be that hypocrite, dude. I didn't want to be that guy that was getting drunk on Saturday night and telling you sin for it on Sunday morning.
So, what was it like recording hip hop? Was that like a natural thing for you, or did you just kind of feel like you were the square peg trying to fit into the round hole the whole time?
It was actually pretty natural for me. At one time, I actually got pretty good at it. I still love hip hop, and the newer stuff out is pretty much trash. But the good stuff I enjoy, the older stuff. And I remember what we would do. We would practice our verse. Me and my buddy Josh, we would practice before we'd go record, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the first time we went to the studio, I was real nervous, and I remember Murray was recording us, and I spit my first verse, and he didn't even look at me, but he just said, "Well, you might have potential." I said, "Okay, cool." So I think we did two Good Old Boys albums, and I even did a couple solo projects on my own there. So it was natural, man. I enjoyed it, and I will always say this: I'm proud of those times, and they also made me a better writer. Um, because in my mind, when you're rapping, a four measure bar, you got more words you have to put in there. Da 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 da. But when you're singing, you can stretch those words. Like da 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 da. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it took less time for me to write songs because I was used to putting so many words into one structure. So whereas a full song of me rapping would be a half a song of me singing.
So, how did you make the transition? What caused you to make that transition?
Well, even then, when I was making hip hop music, I always told everybody that I was working with, I don't want to do this forever. I want to eventually, expand because, I love all music. I want a band. I want to write my own songs. I want to sing. I love country music. I want to do country music. I love, soul and R&B music. I love rock and roll music. So, uh, as time progressed, and you get a little older and you learn that sometimes it was just the right moment. And I went into writing songs for people, and there was a guy who was starting up a band, and he wanted me to write some songs for him, and he had a studio. So I told him, well, if you'll let me record some of my songs in your studio, I'll write songs for your band. Kind of scratch my back type thing.
Sure.
Well, I wrote these songs for the guy, and I went to their rehearsal, and they started singing it, and the guy was a god awful singer. Like he was horrible, and I was like, "No, man, you're not singing it right." Like I was just like, it's like watching your child get thrown into the gorilla exhibit, man. I was just like, "Man, no, this is horrible." And I remember him saying, "Well, how would you sing it?" I said, "This is how I would sing it." And so I sang it, and like everybody in his band, all the guys there kind of looked at each other, and they were like, "Why don't you be the lead singer for our band?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm a really good singer. I didn't consider myself, a good singer." And they were like, "No, man, you're pretty good." So that's kind of how I started out with the next step in music, which were where I started out, and I did with Shot Time and Cigarettes, the band that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And we came up with the name because we would literally go, and they were amazed by me because I could, because of the hip hop, a lot of that is freestyle and writing very fast. I was able to come up with songs just with them playing riffs, and I would just start singing into a microphone, and we would record it, and we'd do like one or two of those, and then we'd say, "All right, time for a cigarette and a shot." So we'd say "Shot Time and Cigarettes," and yeah, so that's how the name Shot Time and Cigarettes came about, and that's how I got into that band, and pretty much how I transitioned into actual singing and writing songs with, actual instrumentation, instead of just 808s and hi-hats.
So, while you were with Shot Time and Cigarettes, how did things progress with them?
Well, kind of a cool story, I guess. It was There was a group of guys that was in the band: Kyle Springer, Jonathan Newton, Dale Adams, and myself. And there was a tryout at the Spillway Bar and Grill from a friend of ours that we knew, to open up for Shooter Jennings in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So the tryout was basically you did one acoustic song that was an original, and then you did one of Shooter's songs. And they had some judges there, and whoever won, won the right to open up for Shooter Jennings. And we won that. So we won the right to open up for Shooter Jennings, but I wanted more power. I wanted a full band, and little did I know Shooter was only going to do an acoustic show that night, but we opened up for Shooter and Fifth on the Floor, and I brought in a good friend of mine that is a kick-ass guitar player by the name of Paul Lowe. So I brought Paul Lowe into the band. It was basically just a one-off, with him, but it turned into he enjoyed the music and he joined the band. Then later on, we members left, we had new members join, and there at the end of Shot Time and Cigarettes, man, we were really running on all cylinders. But people have lives, man. They've got families, and if you're going to take the music business, I hate using that word, but if you're going to take this seriously, you have to be willing to basically play for nothing sometimes, and you have to be away from your family and stuff like that. And that's kind of how the opportunity for the EP came about. And it was, guys, I'm going to do this. And it just didn't work out, it just, a long story short, it just didn't work out. So, really Shot Time and Cigarettes hasn't done anything in a while. I don't think that's dead per se. I think one day, you might actually see that come back. But I just wanted to focus on other things. And, Shot Time and Cigarettes was a loud, kick-ass, high-energy band. And I just, sometimes you need those amps turned down a little bit, and you need those drums turned down a little bit. And that's kind of what I chose to do for the EP.
So we're talking about your EP now. If you haven't got it yet, it's entitled Next. Where can the people get it?
They get those, I guess, they can get it on iTunes, Google Play. I think you can find it on Spotify, Amazon.com, YoungMarysRecords.com, I believe it is. I think that's it. You can find it there. I was very fortunate to be able to put this out on Young Mary's Records. And, yeah, man, that's pretty much, I guess, everywhere you can find it. Or you can just come to Bowling Green, Kentucky and find me. I've got some of them. All
right. So let's talk kind of how that came together. And you talked about the end of Shot Time and Cigarettes and how you kind of knew that you wanted to do something a little different. But how did you know, and how did you come to the decision that Next is what you wanted to do?
Well, man, to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't know what I wanted to do. When Mary approached me with an opportunity to record at David Barrick's, who, David Barrick has done the Kentucky Headhunters records. He's done Blackstone Sherry's records, a lot of great bands. And when Mary approached me about this, I really didn't know what I wanted to bring to the table. I knew I wanted it to be different. And to be honest with you, I was in kind of a low spot in my life, My dad was real sick, and my, I was just kind of, when I had a tragedy happen to me, and it took about 6 months to a year before I even wanted to write again. So I had all this built up in me, man. I had a lot of pain and a lot of I guess it was like a soul searching thing.
Sure.
And I didn't really know how I wanted to hit it. I didn't know what angle I wanted to come from, because when you're presented an opportunity like this, you want it to be good, but you don't want it to be fake, and you want it to be real. And there's a fine line between finding what's true to you and where you're at, and something for the masses, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So my good buddy Coulter Wall, who we all know and love, and we was sitting on the front porch at Mary's, and we was talking about it. And I told him, I said, man, I just don't know really where I want to go with this. And he said, man, it was the best advice I got from this 21-year-old guy. He was like, well, Big Dave, where are you at right now in life? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that's what I'd write about, wherever you're at right now. And I said, man, that's perfect, And so basically I wrote 5 songs in 2.5 days. And, the EP's got 6 songs on it. One of them is a cover, but I just basically wrote, really, it just poured out of me. And that's kind of how we got, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of where I came to terms with how I wanted to do this and what I wanted it to sound like. I wanted to keep the Southern country soul, and that's what I wanted to bring.
Southern country soul. I think that's about the best way to sum that EP up. That's perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what was the recording process like? Was it fast? Was there curveballs that you didn't see coming? How did that go?
It was. We booked 3 days with Barrick, and I was, man, I was so blessed to have these guys that played on the record for me. I had, of course, I had Jason Simpson on the bass. He played all the bass guitar, and then Coulter Wall played all the acoustic guitar on the EP. And John Clay, bless his heart, he played everything else. So he played the drums. I think we had the slide guitar, the harmonica, all the keyboards and organs. And poor John Clay, it might as well have been his daggum album because he played on everything. Poor fella.
That's John Clay for you. If it can be played, by God, he can play it.
Yeah. So, but I was real fortunate, and when we decided to, record, I remember, because I'm not very good at playing instruments, I would have these melodies in my head, and we'd go over to Mary's, and at first it was me and Coulter, and Mary had a little organ in the back of her house. It was one of those organs that had the long pedals on the floor, the double-decker organ.
Yeah.
And I would have the melody in my head of it, so I would go to the organ, and I'd basically hit the keys, and play out the melody on the keys, and Coulter would sit there with the acoustic and find it, and so we did that. I mean, there was times that I came to Jason and I said, Jason, I want the bass line to sound like this. Boom, 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 boom. And he looked at me and I said, well, here, I've recorded me humming it on the, so then we just, yeah, I still got that recording. But, Jason came into the fray with us. We put these songs together, and we basically built this stuff from the ground up, man. I mean, the song Every Day, it's just me and John Clay playing this Rhodes, and we literally in the studio kind of built this song from the ground up. And that's why I love the EP. It was real raw, and I mean, we put this all together. I mean, no bullshit, in a matter of days.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fast, really quick. So working with those guys was great. I think having guys like Coulter and John Clay and Jason in the room, those guys, especially, Coulter and John Clay, they're big time, Van Zant guys, and they want that more Americana, well, not Americana, but more of a folk song type feel, and I lean more towards the soulful stuff. So you had both of us kind of pulling on that, but meeting in the middle at the same time. And I think it came together really well because you get both aspects. And I don't think I could have put another group of guys in a room to play those songs the way that they played those songs. So, man, I was just tickled to death with it. And I mean, who as an artist, how can you be upset as a songwriter to have three of these great guys playing with you? So I was very blessed, very blessed.
Sure, and those guys right now, I mean, they're building something really special, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think they're overseas right now, selling out shows
Mm-hmm.
overseas. You know, so like I said, from my perspective of who I got to play on the record, it was a big difference from Shot Time and Cigarettes. So it was a different group of guys, and it was a different sound. And I even told David Barrick, I said, I want this EP to sound like nothing that's ever come out of here before. And I think we accomplished that.
Definitely, it definitely has its own unique sound. That Southern soul, like we talked about earlier, that put a big smile on my face because that's the perfect way to describe it. So, once that was finally released to the public, what did that mean for you?
Well, it meant a lot on different aspects. Um, to be honest with you, man, it was a little bittersweet. Um, I, you know, I'd spoke before about how my dad had been sick, and I don't think anybody really knew how bad it was. And this EP was basically more or less dedicated to my good friend that passed away, John Hensley, who just had a birthday.
Long
Uh,
live the Colonel.
Absolutely, man. And a lot of these songs were therapeutic for me and a way for me to get past, not past it, but get it out off my chest. So I wanted to release that on June 1st because that would have been the 2-year anniversary of his passing. And I thought it was a nice way for me to kind of remember him. And ended up we had some shows lined up. We was going to do a little tour, release, shows. And as fate has it, my dad ended up passing away on Memorial Day of this year on the 29th. So, you know, June 1st was right around the corner. My dad's funeral was June 1st. So I buried my dad the same day I was supposed to release the EP. And, I canceled everything. And I said, I've got to take time, to heal from this, be with my mom and my family.
Sure.
And, because it was kind of, even though we knew dad was sick, it was still sudden. You never really expect that.
Nope.
So when that happened, we decided, we got together, and Mary and her team that she's got, which is excellent, it said, it's okay. We'll just push everything back a little bit. And we decided to release it on July 1st instead. And so being able to see your finished product, and it felt very good to know, what I'm saying, that I'd accomplished something. It felt very good to know that I had, something for John, but it was bittersweet because, he couldn't be there to see it, and neither could my dad.
Yeah.
I wish they could have been there for that, man. And but I know they're looking down, and I know they're proud. Uh, but it was, like I said, it was bittersweet, man. It should have been one of the more, exciting moments of my life, and it was. But there was also this sadness because it was that EP turned out to be deeper than I thought it would ever be, if that makes any sense.
Sure, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to play one of the songs from the EP. We're going to play Taste of Rain. Do you want to go ahead and explain the story behind that song?
Yeah, man. Taste of Rain was a song that when actually this was one of the songs that Coulter was just fiddling around on the guitar, and I recorded it and went and sat down on the couch belly first and wrote the song in about 10 minutes. When this song basically, when John had passed away, I remember that day, and I remember leaving, and it was raining. And I remember going to his funeral, and it was a sunny, hot day in June, and then as we were leaving, it just come down a torrential downpour. So this song is basically explaining how, even though I do the same things, nothing's still the same. So that's basically what that means.
Now, this is David Vaughn Lindsey and Taste of Rain. We'll be right back.
Figured it out while I was dreaming, crying and sorrow still remain. If I could, you'd know that I'd save you. Yes, I would. Money ain't no substitute for pain. I drank from the bottle and I passed the cocaine. For some damn reason, the rain don't taste the same. We had all we ever wanted, yet we were trying to get by. Sometimes you get downhearted, I know that you do. And other times you just get high. Get high. I drank from the bottle and I passed the cocaine. For some damn reason, the rain don't taste the same. I drank from the bottle and I passed the cocaine. Before some damn reason, the rain don't taste the same.
Welcome back to the Country Music Armadillo Show. That was Big Dave and Taste of Rain. Hey, we want to take a quick minute to thank Mary Spar and Young Mary's Record for once again partnering with us to help support this interview and get this out here. I can't say enough good things about Mary Spar. She's one of my favorite people in the world. She's good friends with Dave. She helped get this record out for him. She's just one of the best out there.
Well, I can say enough good things about her.
I don't want to get in the middle of that one. So I called you Big Dave coming out of the interview, and I'm hoping by now that listeners have made the connection that on Colter Wall's newest release, you are the Big Dave mentioned in Me and Big Dave. So how did that song come about? Did Colter write that without you knowing, or did you guys sit down one night and do that together, or what?
No, man. Actually, that song came about. He wrote that by himself. It's funny. The night that in the song he's talking about, it was two guys, probably having a little bit too much to drink, but we was sitting on Mary's front porch. There's a lot of good conversations happening on that front porch, and after you start drinking a little bit, and me and Colter had hung out quite a bit, but this was the first night that we actually like got, you know, talking deep, and we really started talking about things, man. And a couple days later, he said, "Man, I wrote a song called Me and Big Dave, and it's about that night me and you had on the porch." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "I'll have to play it for you sometime." And I guess it was maybe a week or two later. I don't remember. Once again, we was drinking a little bit, probably more than we should have. And he said, "I'm going to play that song for you, Big Dave." I said, "All right, Coulter." So he picks up his guitar and he gets to Me and Big Dave and the first little line there, and then he looks at me and says, "I'm sorry, I'm too drunk. I can't play it." I said, "Okay." So that was actually pretty funny. But I think a few weeks later, he was down in Nashville, and he had the full band with him, and I was in the audience, and he played it, man. And you talk about holding back tears a little bit. I'm not going to lie, you know. I didn't cry. I didn't cry, but I had to fight them off, man, because I told Coulter nobody else could have wrote that song but him. Because there's a lot of underlining messages in that song, and there's a lot of things that people might not pick up on, but me and him know. And nobody else could have wrote that song but him. And I look at it as, from a singer-songwriter perspective myself, that's probably one of the biggest tips of the cap, or, you know, a nod that another artist can give you, man, is to write a song like that, especially, you know, right out of the gate. I was honored for that, you know, and it meant a lot to me, and it's a hell of a song. I tell people it's my, you know, favorite song on the record, but it's probably actually like my second or third favorite song on the record.
So, now that he's written a song about you, do you ever think about maybe writing a sequel, something like Me and Little Coulter?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've been thinking about writing a song about the Canadian serial killer, the Saskatchewan and I don't know if that'll be proper for radio play, but who cares about radio play, right?
The Speedy Creek Psycho.
No, there actually is a Saskatchewan Strangler.
Whoa!
Yes, like there is actually, like, we Googled it, me and Coulter.
Is this one of those nights where you guys had a little much to drink?
Yeah, maybe, probably. But we were talking about serial killers for some reason, and we got on the subject, and I'm almost positive that there's a Saskatchewan Strangler serial killer. So, I don't know, maybe I can tie Coulter into that somehow.
So, Coulter brought you out to Tumbleweed as a surprise guest, and you guys did a few songs up on stage. You guys did Taste of Rain. How did that come together?
Well, it came together by, once again, you know, Mary basically said, "Why don't you sing a song?" You know, and I was actually about a month before that. She had thought I should go up there and sing. She said, "You should go up there when he does Me and Big Dave," and I was like, "Why?" Because I don't sing all that song. And I said, if we're gonna do this, we should, you know, since these are the guys that played on the EP, pretty much, like, we should do a song off the EP. So Mary asked if I wanted to join them, and Coulter was cool with it. Everybody in the band was cool with it, and I said, "Man, we should do Taste of Rain," because it's one of my favorite songs, and, you know, also Coulter's got that low end harmony on that one, and shoot, man, for a guy like me to be able to get up there in front of those people, and you know, in front of a nice crowd, and so many great artists were there that weekend. I was just taken back by it, man. It was a great experience, and I was, you know, very fortunate once again to just have so many cool people around me that are so willing to give that they asked me to go up there and sing for them. So it was pretty cool, man. The whole
And
experience was awesome, to be honest with you.
yeah.
Except for one thing. I don't know if I should bring that up or not.
Well, we'll just keep on trucking on that one. I've done my part. I so well, standing out in the crowd, I could tell that there were people who a lot of people kind of knew who you were, but there were a lot of people that didn't, and you know the mood kind of changes when you bring someone else up on stage that hey, maybe I'm not so sure of this guy, I'm not paying as much attention. But when you guys started singing and you guys got into that song, you brought them right back to you, and by God, they knew who you were when you got off that stage. You
Oh,
made a hell of an impression that day.
no, well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
No, no problem.
Yeah, it's always for me, being at the shows and meeting people and that's what it's all about for me, man.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who knew who you were after that. So we've talked a little bit about it, but and you seem like one of those guys that you can hammer a song out in no time flat. But is there anything unique about your songwriting style? Do you need to be in a certain mood, or can you just be driving down the road and something pop in your head and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I got to run with this real quick?
Uh, Man, my writing style is basically continuous. My mind always is working. Like it's constantly things pop up in my head. So I could have an idea in my head for a year and a half, 2 years, and wouldn't actually start writing about that until I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I've compiled enough information in my mind that I think I can tackle this now. And then other times, man, like I said back again when I was doing the hip hop music, I was taught and basically trained, you know, to write fast, like you said, just hammer it out because I was told, you know, what if you're in a studio or you're somewhere and somebody doesn't show up for a session and they need somebody to fill a spot? If you can't write right there on the spot, then you're going to get looked over. So I was trained to write very, very fast. And because I just compile so much shit in my head constantly, whenever it comes down to actually, putting a pen to paper, it usually comes out real quick. Now afterwards I might go back and change some things, I might reword it, but I just let it roll because, at that moment, usually you go with, what they say, your first instinct's usually your best.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't question it too much, and I just come back and look at it again, and I'm like, okay, this needs to be here, this needs to be here, or I need to reword that. Uh, I really enjoy when I have some type of instrumentation before I start writing. Like if somebody brings a riff to me or something, and if you give me a subject matter, or you don't even have to give me a subject matter, but I mean, I really like to let the music dictate sometimes what the words are, because I feel like no two musicians will ever play the same thing alike. So just like when we did the EP, I told these guys, hey, I want it to sound kind of like this. I kind of hummed along with, the melody, but all in all, I really let them have the freedom they wanted to play it how they wanted to play it because I enjoy that. So, man, I don't really have to be in a certain mood. I really don't have to. Yeah, it does not come hard. It comes very easy to me, and I don't brag on myself very much, but I know I can write a lot of songs really quick. They might not be good, but I can I can give you quantity at least.
All right, so we're gonna start kind of a new portion of the show here. You're the lab rat here,
Hmm.
um, and it's just gonna be a little word association game. I'm gonna throw three terms out there, and some of them I'm just drawing these randomly, and
Okay.
some of them are specific, but I'll just give you three things, and you shoot from the hip with whatever comes to mind. You can say whatever you want about it, or tell me to go away. I don't care.
All right.
So, what's your favorite album of all time?
Oh, man.
That's
Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson, Stardust.
Oh, very good choice. Very good choice.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley.
John Hensley.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I never liked Elvis, and I liked Elvis, but I never listened to his music real hard until I met John.
He was an Elvis aficionado.
Absolutely.
Mary Spar.
I love her. That's my sister. I don't know what else to say, man. She's one of the people that I just can't lose her, man. You know what I mean? She means a lot to me, and brilliant, smarter than everybody else I know, and very strong person, and I love her to death.
I want to throw in a fourth one here. Who's your favorite wrestler?
Of all time, or on the active wrestling?
Let's go ahead and do both.
Favorite wrestler of all time, I'm going to have to, man, and as a wrestling fan, that changes, okay? Right now, man, I don't think anybody can ever hold a candle to what Stone Cold Steve Austin did for the business, and at the time when he was on top. I know it's kind of a cliche, but come on, man, how can you go wrong with Stone Cold? I would kill to have Stone Cold Steve Austin on Raw right now, man.
Right.
On the active roster, my favorite wrestler in the world today is Curtis Axel.
Now you got to go ahead and tell everybody about the connection here.
Oh, I mean, there really isn't no connection. I like Curtis Axel as a wrestler.
Okay.
Yeah, honest to God, there's no connection other than, Mr. Perfect was probably my second favorite wrestler.
You see, I'm a Ric Flair guy myself, so these last few days have been kind of on edge for me.
Yeah, I know, man. I don't know. I haven't heard much about that, but, man, the Nature Boy. I used to watch that. I used to watch those old wrestling, I guess was it NWA?
Mm-hmm.
When he was with the Horsemen and all that.
Yep.
I mean, that was great as a kid, man. I was lucky to see all the great moments in wrestling.
Somehow on this show, we always take a turn down wrestling lane.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it, man.
It's funny because last year we had Josh on the show, and we somehow got to talking about Die Hard Tom McClane. And if you know Tom McClane, you're in good company. But Josh kind of threw out a half-joking challenge to Tom on the show.
Yeah.
And those guys actually ended up wrestling a match.
Hey, man, that's how I got turned on to your podcast, bro. and I saw the match, and I said, well, hell, Morningstar can work better than half the people on Monday night. Tom McClane, man, I don't know if he's listening, but if he does listen, I want him to know that I'm the biggest mark for Tom McClane, and anytime he posts live Facebook of him wrestling anybody, I always chat hashtag bite him for Big Dave, and he'll bite the guy. So big up to Tom McClane there.
It was funny when we had Coulter and Mary on the show. I brought that up, and I asked if maybe they were going to. And Mary, she jumped right up. She said, "Yeah, I'll go and take him on." And she was raring and ready to go. And Coulter was just kind of like, "I don't know about this."
Well, now I don't have my license anymore, but I used to be a licensed wrestler in the state of Kentucky. And I do not care to give him, Joshua Morningstar, Curtis Axel, or Stone Cold Steve Austin a big boot to the head if they have a problem with anything we've said on this podcast or anything with you. I will give them a big boot to the forehead. I can still pull that move off.
That's awesome. So another new thing we're going to start, and we're going to kind of move this away from the podcast here eventually. We're going to start kind of a story corner, story time type thing. Basically, I'm just going to have artists tell a story. It can be music related or non-music related, or just basically a story about whatever they want. So you're on the clock. Tell us some kind of story.
Uh, Me, John Hensley, and Mary Spar being interrogated by the police by a creek.
Well, I'm never going to turn down hearing stories about the Colonel.
All right, so this is my favorite story to tell about him. Me and John had went to the spillway, and we had a little bit too much to drink. That's kind of a reoccurring subject here. Mary did not want to join us because she was smart. And after we'd had a little bit too much to drink, the bar closed down, so we called Mary, and Mary come to pick us up. And me and John were literally sitting outside of Spillway, and I heard her cackling, laughing as she's pulling up from the street because we probably looked like hell. And we get in the car, and right down the road from Spillway, if you pull off, there's a little, what do they call it, like a little loading dock or whatever for like boats, so you can get to the river, I guess. And you're not supposed to go there after a certain time. I mean, there's clearly a sign that says, no one enter after 10 p.m. But John decided that we should go down there, even though it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And Mary insisted this is a stupid idea, but me and John were like, come on, Mary, be cool. This will be cool. And we literally just wanted to go sit by the water and look at the stars. As homoerotic as that sounds, that is literally. So we're sitting there and we're looking at the stars, man, like literally. Well, I see a bright light shining down upon us. And anybody that knows me knows, when there's action to be had, I'm ready for action. So when I saw the light, I jumped up and said, hey, motherfucker, what's up? And then I heard, put your hands in the air. And I realized there was a figure walking to me with a deputy hat on and everything. And I said, well, shit. So I put my hands up, and then he told me and Mary, John and Mary to do the same. As he approaches us, he says, y'all know that you're not supposed to be down here? And of course, I'm like, sir, I didn't know. Well, there's a sign right there that says you're not supposed to be here after 10 o'clock. Oh, sir, I'm sorry, we didn't see it, which I totally lied. And, he checks my pockets and all this other stuff. And he says, well, do you guys know why? Well, no, actually, first he says to Mary, do you know these men? And Mary says, yes, sir. This one here is my boyfriend. Unfortunately, the other guy is just our fuck up friend. And then the officer said, well, do you know what people come down here to do at this time? And we said, no, sir. What they come down here to do? He said, this is where homosexual meth heads come to sell their and prostitute for meth. So John says, we're not meth heads, man. We're not doing meth. We're not doing drugs. And I was like, and we're not gay. So he said, I'll let y'all go. Da, 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 da. So we get in the car. And if you let John tell it, he was like, see, the cops came down there because he thought Mary was a prostitute. So that is one of my favorite John Hensley stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, does Mary ever reference back to that when she tells you something's a good idea and you, well, I don't know about that. And she, what about that time?
Yeah. Usually nowadays, I just kind of listen to Mary. He's, I'm like, okay, Mary. Or if she says, don't do that, I'm like, okay, Mary. I try not to do it. I can't always, what mama don't see won't hurt her.
That's awesome. So, what's next for Big Dave?
Basically, man, I just want to try to continue to write songs, continue to, try to make good music. I'm looking to do some shows and start touring out and doing some gigs regionally. Um, I'm looking to actually, at the beginning of the year, do a little mini tour with a good friend of mine that we all know. I guess I can share his name. I just don't want to jinx it. But me and Josh Morningstar have been talking, man,
Nice.
and I'd like to try to do a Josh Morningstar DVL tour. I don't know if I think it would draw. We'll see. But basically, my focus right now is continue to write, continue to try to get better, get as many shows as I can, say yes to everything until I can't say yes anymore because I'm so busy. And man, just that's it, man. Just live life and try to accomplish as much as I can before they put me in the ground, I guess.
You mentioned Josh. He's actually he's going out on the road full time starting here next month. So things are starting to pick, and he's got his new album coming out next month. So things are really picking up for him. I'd love to see you guys get together and bum around the country and bring the music to the people. That would be really exciting.
I think so too, man. And because I haven't done a lot of touring and done a lot of traveling, I would like to do it with somebody that I like and trust and I
Sure.
know I get along with. So me and Josh are good buddies. I've always respected him as a man, much less an artist. So I think that would work out real good.
That sounds like a really great plan. Dave, thanks for taking the time to join us here tonight. I've had a hell of a lot of fun with it. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks again to Young Mary's Records, Mary Spar, for helping us out with this one. We've got a lot of guests wanting to come on the show. It's just a matter of getting everybody scheduled, and I'm trying to get away from dropping them right on top of each other and kind of getting them lost in the fray together. So we'll be back next time. I'm not sure who we'll have, but I'll start making announcements as soon as I get shows lined up. Thanks again, Dave. This has been the Country Music Armadillo Show.